You know, there used to be a time when Dragon Ball was pretty cool. Some might even say that Dragon Ball is still pretty cool, but I'm just kidding. Super is alright sometimes, but I remember a time as a kid when Dragon Ball, particularly Dragon Ball Z, had some of the most heart-pounding and intense arcs in any show I had ever seen. Before getting into Dragon Ball and anime in general for that matter, I had really only been exposed to other more quote-unquote normal forms of kids' entertainment. Think your SpongeBob's, your Dexter's Lab, that kind of thing. And even though those shows are awesome and I still like them, when I tuned in and saw for the first time these super-powered martial artists fighting for their lives against like galactic existential evil, I was freaking hooked. And from a young age, I was always a fan of an often very overlooked character. Krillin, at least when I was growing up, was always something of a joke among my peers. He was short, he was bald, he had a nasally voice, and he was the worst thing that you could possibly be in the Dragon Ball world. He was weak. Throughout the history of the fandom, Krillin has been a bit of a laughingstock, but the question I want to ask today is, why were we such idiots? This little dude used to stand on business, and even though he has gotten a little more respect in recent years, I think partly due to the fandom growing up a little bit, at least in my generation, allowing us to focus on things like character over power levels, and also maybe a little due to his being actually pretty decent in recent media, like Dragon Ball FighterZ, for example. Seriously, watching Krillin body guys like Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and Ultra Instinct Goku will never not be funny to me. But historically, this hasn't really been the case, at least not in the circles that I frequented. And yet, throughout the entire series, even once he passed into irrelevance, Krillin has always been one of the most Admiral Z fighters to me. When it's time to step up to a villain bigger, stronger, and way scarier than he'd like to, he's still always there, ready to do what it takes to defend his friends and his home. So in this video, I'm gonna walk through the entirety of Dragon Ball Z, examining Krillin's role throughout the story in order to prove, once and for all, that our little bald friend deserves a lot more respect than he gets. Alright, starting off strong is the intro to Dragon Ball Z, the Saiyan Saga. Obviously, we're gonna skip past Raditz because, I mean, Krillin doesn't do anything in that part other than get pimp slapped by Raditz's tail as a way to introduce how strong Raditz is, as well as to reveal that he's Goku's brother. Cool. Fast forward, Raditz dies, reveals that Nappa and Vegeta are on the way to get the Dragon Balls, and so Earth's defenders have to train for a year to get ready for this impending threat. And of course, who was among them? Our boy Krillin. If you go back and reread this arc or rewatch it, you'll find out that Krillin actually shows up in a big way, ready to square up against the Saiyans. Yeah, as always, it's in the hopes that Goku is gonna show up and, quote, take things from here, end quote, but he's ready to throw down regardless. After Yamcha lays waste to a Cyberman, these things are stated to be as strong as Raditz, by the way. You know, that guy that Goku and Piccolo had to team up to defeat and then only managed to with the help of Gohan, meaning after a year of training, Yamcha was able to surpass Goku and Piccolo combined at the start of the series. You know, maybe I should make a video about Yamcha being underrated at some point. But he gets notoriously killed when a Cyberman self-destructs. Nappa and Vegeta say some lame trash talk about Yamcha, and it really pisses Krillin off, to say the least. I mean, look at this panel, look at this frame. Wearing that look, he declares to the group to get out of the way because he's about to solo these idiots. Okay, maybe he was a little overconfident, but he unleashes an attack so strong that it even sends Piccolo ducking for cover and simultaneously kills all of the remaining Cybermen except for one that manages to get away in a single attack. That's right, Krillin single-handedly kills the equivalent of a handful of Raditzes, aka the guy who slapped him away like a fly like 10 minutes ago, in a single blast. This moment was actually pretty huge as a kid because it showed me, oh, Goku and Piccolo are not the only ones who are going to throw hands in this show. And it doesn't stop there. Once Nappa steps up, he flexes a little bit, makes everybody wet themselves with how strong he is, but Krillin does not run. He doesn't hide, he bucks up and coordinates with Piccolo to take the absolute strongest opponent he's ever even dreamed of down. The Nappa fight is actually one of the best in the series, 10 toes down in my opinion. It's full of like a ton of strategy and tactics as Piccolo, Krillin, and Gohan kind of fight for their lives against a much stronger opponent, and they actually managed to get some good hits in. In fact, Krillin honestly almost wins the entire thing when he launches a Destructo Disc, and yeah, whatever, I use the English dub names, I don't know what a Kinzen Shinshan, or I don't know what that is. But anyway, the Destructo Disc would have killed Nappa if Vegeta hadn't interfered. And this is not the first time this is going to happen in this series, by the way. But I don't know, I just feel like the sequence of the Z Fighters desperately planning and executing their attacks has just really always been one of my favorite moments in the entire franchise. It's a big reason why I gravitate toward the early arcs in the series. I really like the Saiyan and the Namek Sagas a lot more than the Android Saga or the Buu Saga. We'll get into that later, but I also tend to gravitate more toward those characters in like fighting games and stuff. It just felt like there was a lot more at stake, and Toriyama still really thought out his battles when he wrote them beyond just this guy is way stronger than that guy. But that's fine, we'll get to that. So Goku shows up, he beats Nappa, Vegeta kills Nappa, we know the story, Goku fights Vegeta. So surely at this point you think this is when Krillin steps aside and becomes more irrelevant to the rest of the arc, right? Wrong. Okay, well, kinda wrong. Goku does tell Krillin and Goku to kick rocks because they're not good enough to stick around, but when Gohan decides to come back when Goku's on the ropes, who's right there with him? Despite maybe a little bit of hesitation. I really like this scene because Krillin states, Gohan, you're probably crazy for wanting to go back, but I guess I'm also crazy because I'm going to. That's right, Krillin is going back into the fray. He couldn't even beat Nappa with the help of every other Z fighter, but he doesn't run and hide when it's time to throw hands with Vegeta either. When he and Gohan get back, Krillin immediately starts barking orders and taking charge. He's ready to jump right back in even though he knows death is going to be the only realistic result. So what does he do? Well, he has Gohan be a distraction and then he throws a Destructo Disc. Oh, and then he also throws a freaking Spirit Bomb. And when Vegeta is defeated, he tries to freaking end him with Yajirobe's sword. I'm telling you, Krillin is not playing around, dude. And don't worry, fellow Bald Man fans. It only gets better from here. Moving on to my personal favorite arc in the series and what will probably be the lengthiest section of the video, because honestly, Krillin just has the most screen time that he gets in this arc than he does in the rest of the series, basically. But even just setting up the arc, Krillin is the one who has the idea to travel to Namek to use their Dragon Balls to revive everyone who died in the battle with the Saiyans. Fast forward through some setup, including training while on the trip. Now remember, at this point they don't even know that there's going to be bad guys on Namek. They've been told the exact opposite, that there's only peaceful people on Namek, but the boys are just staying sharp, even in this moment. But it turns out when they arrive, they actually weren't the first ones to think about using the Namekian Dragon Balls. Y'all know the drill. If you know the story, Frieza's army has showed up to Namek and is wreaking havoc on the natives looking for the Dragon Balls, but enter Krillin and Gohan. And don't worry, by the way, Gohan's gonna get his own video in the future because Gohan is another one of my favorite characters in the series. But anyway, Krillin and Gohan show up and it's time to beat ass. By the way, as an aside, Krillin backward baseball cap drip is kind of nice. I really like this like costume. I don't know what you call it. I'm going off script here a little bit, but he should definitely have this costume with the backwards baseball cap in more games. But yeah, Frieza goons, we beat those. Tiny Namekian infants, we rescue those. Big dumb pink Popeye forearm having aliens, we solar flare their stupid fat selves. Seriously, does anyone actually like Dodoria, by the way? If you're the like one Dodoria fan in the world, like this video, it's mandatory. Vegeta, we stand up to him. That's right, once again, even though he stands absolutely zero chance of winning and is probably about to die, Krillin stops to fight Vegeta and buy some time for Gohan to get to Guru's house. Now, luckily for our little Shaolin hero, Vegeta's not really interested in fighting him or killing him, and so instead they join forces for a little while. And that brings us to one of my favorite sequences in the entire show, the Ginyu Force. I really don't know what it is, but I freaking love these guys. I know I'm not alone in that. That's not just like an unpopular opinion, but I go back to the Ginyu fights pretty often to just, I guess, appreciate them. I don't know. Goldo's kind of mid, but actually no. Let me go off script again. Goldo's not mid. Goldo sucks. Nobody likes Goldo, but the other four are super sick. I really like them for some reason. And I also love that my boy Krillin is right there in the middle of it. Basically, for the random person who clicked on a Krillin video who doesn't know anything about the Ginyu Force, they're like the elite of the elite in Frieza's army. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that Ginyu himself is actually the strongest member of the entire Frieza Force, second only to Frieza himself, at least as far as we know. And the others are no slouches. I just had to go shoo my cat away. I swear, trying to record videos when you have cats is insane. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so Goldo's actually pretty weak. He's considered definitely much weaker than the other Ginyu members, but he has this weird time control power that allows him to get an advantage over other fighters, and that's really why he's here. But regardless of that, Gohan and Krillin still team up to give him the work until he basically cheats to get the win. He uses his telekinesis stuff. The other members even mention that Krillin and Gohan are strong enough to push Goldo to the point where he has to use an ability that he hardly ever, I don't know, resorts to, I guess. This scene is removed from Kai, by the way. I don't really understand why. Kai sucks. Don't watch Kai. Just read the manga or watch the original. Who cares? Some of the filler in Dragon Ball is actually pretty good, so whatever. Just watch the original. But anyway, Vegeta steps in and takes him out, claiming that he only did it because he saw an opportunity to kill Goldo, but in my headcanon, even though he never actually says it, I think it was because he actually knew that he had a better chance of beating the Ginyu Force with those two still around to help. I don't know, maybe that's cope, but this is my video, so I can cope if I want to. That joke was horrible, but I'm leaving it in just to shame myself. Up next is the Vegeta versus Recoome fight, and y'all are gonna get tired of me saying this, but I freaking love this fight. The savagery of Vegeta mixed with the nonchalant attitude of Recoome as he kind of plays with his food. The whole sequence I just think is really good. I really like it a lot. But ultimately Recoome, he just proves to be too much for our Prince of the Space Warriors, and just as he's about to be finished off, we have one of my favorite Krillin moments of all time. Now, here's a point where I'm gonna use some dialogue from the English dub that's not strictly canon, but it's the dub I grew up with, so I don't care. See, in the manga, it's a quick decision. Krillin says, hey, Vegeta can't dodge, he can't get out of the way, we've got to attack right now, more or less. And it's like one panel and it's over with, which by the way, even if you're only counting that single panel, it's still pretty sick. Krillin is establishing in that moment that he's willing to put himself in danger to save Vegeta, and he's willing to attack a much stronger opponent to do so. I think that's cool anyway. But in the old English dub from back in the day, he actually says this: Gohan, look, it doesn't matter anymore. Whatever we do, we're still gonna die. We can't beat these guys, none of us, not even Goku. There's nothing left to lose. I'm going in. What a freaking gangster. He knew he couldn't win, and from his perspective, nobody could win, not even Goku. He saw the way that Vegeta, the guy who bodied Goku, got completely handled by Recoome. What chance does he have? None, but in his own words, that shit don't matter. Krillin is a fighter, he's a warrior, and he would rather go down fighting than running away, especially if running meant leaving Vegeta to his death. Bam, boom! Krillin does possibly even more damage to Recoome than Vegeta managed to by slamming his mouth shut on his own attack, knocking those teeth clean out. Yeah, okay, he gets one-shotted after that, but to even have the gall to piss off someone that much stronger than you, it takes some stones, that's all I'm saying. Everything looks pretty dire. Goku, of course, as he always does, shows up. He essentially 1v4s the rest of the Ginyu Force, gets sort of beaten by Ginyu, and oh, you thought that Krillin was finished now that Goku's here? I don't know why you thought that this time when it wasn't true last time, but I'm gonna tell you that this dude gets a lot of action in this arc. This was back before Dragon Ball was just the Goku and Vegeta show, after all. As we know, Ginyu switches bodies with Goku and shows up to collect the Dragon Balls, but whoops, Ginyu is a dork and doesn't know how to control Goku's body very well, so he gets his ass beat. Again, by Gohan and Krillin. Now, if I'm skipping through this section a little bit, it's because we have a lot of Dragon Ball Z left to cover, but don't worry, I really love the Ginyu Force. That can't be understated how much I love the Ginyu Force, so they're definitely going to get their own video at some point. In the meantime, here's a few panels of Krillin beating Ginyu Goku's behind. Alright, now we have to fast forward some more because admittedly Krillin doesn't do a whole lot for a bit. However, he actually does join in the battle with Frieza during his second form after Vegeta gets all scared from fear. Scared from fear? Did I even proofread this? Again, I'm leaving this in because of how dumb I am. Frieza spends a little time beating on Gohan, and for his efforts, he gets a Destructo Disc to the tail. This attack is so overpowered that even somebody like Frieza is just one disc away from being in two places at once. And there's actually multiple bad guys who just straight copy this ability because of how strong it is. If you recall, back in the Saiyan Saga, Vegeta used it to cut off Gohan's tail whenever Gohan was transformed in his Uzaru form, and then Frieza uses it later himself and ends up ending himself with it. And I know Cell tanked a disc with no issue once he was in his perfect form, but believe it or not, that's actually a filler scene. Still though, it is a pretty cool way to establish how strong Cell is at that point, so I guess we can pretend it's canon, I don't know. Anyway, back to Frieza, and well, Krillin's dead. Except not really. He survives getting impaled on Frieza's big head, and he's right back into it. and then he gets blown up. But you know what? Without his death, we also wouldn't have gotten one of the most iconic transformation scenes in anime history, so there's that, I guess. And that really is it for Krillin in the Namek arc. Unfortunately, he won't get many opportunities to shine like he did here again, because we're about to get to the part of the series where power levels and maximum energy are about to take over, but he still has a moment here or there, so let's get into it. Alright, unfortunately it's all downhill from here, not just for Krillin, but kind of the whole show in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the Android and Cell arcs are bad, in fact I really love them a lot, but I just don't think they hit quite as strong for me as the previous two arcs, and we'll get into the Buu Saga soon enough. This arc really kind of marks the drop off for Krillin in a big way. He doesn't do a whole lot in this arc. Still, one of my favorite things about him still rings true throughout. His willingness to step up to help even when he is way outclassed. Right at the beginning, for example, the crew feels Frieza's impending return, and they show up to take him on to defend their world, and where is Krillin? He's right there with the rest of them. No shot he wins anything against Frieza or King Cold, but it's his world, it's his friends, and he's gonna be there. So Trunks shows up, kills Frieza and Cold, then tells the group that the androids are gonna show up in 3 years, and that they need to be ready. And once again, Krillin trains and is along for the ride. He is one of the Z Warriors and he is gonna answer the call to action. Again, he has no clue how strong the androids are gonna be, only that they are strong enough in Trunks' timeline to kill basically everyone, including all of the powerhouses like Vegeta, Piccolo, Gohan, all of them, but he's there anyway. And that's right, even the old school announcer thought Krillin was sick.
Even Krillin was destroyed by the ruthless duo.
Now he basically does nothing, but he's there. He helps track down 19 and 20 once they've showed up, and of course he gets put in the dirt by 20, but I don't know, I'm trying here, I'm trying to think of some things that he did. But after 16, 17, and 18 show up, Krillin's there once again, this time taking more of a supportive role in the story. I don't know why I wrote that, he always has a supportive role, but maybe you know what I mean. Now despite being completely outclassed and irrelevant in terms of power, he stays relevant to the story by starting to put the moves on everyone's favorite Dragon Ball waifu, Android 18, or Cyborg 18, I guess, whatever you want to call her. And by the way, a lot of people give Krillin a lot of hate for his role in the story at this point, since he's the one who is entrusted to destroy 18, and so they blame him for Cell getting to his perfect form. But let's be real for a second, you haters love Perfect Cell, and I know darn well you love Android 18, and without Krillin letting his boner think for him, you don't get either of them. So whatever. Blah blah, Cell stuff happens, Piccolo gets a sick new power upgrade that's relevant for like 5 seconds. It's weird how that happens twice, by the way. It's like Toriyama wanted Piccolo to be semi-relevant, but couldn't really figure out how to do it other than to give him a big boost and then immediately push him aside for the sake of the Saiyans. I don't know, I guess no one's allowed to be cool unless they have blonde hair around here. But then, once again, Krillin shows up. He's at the Cell games with everybody else. He immediately gets bodied by his Cell Jr., but then he shoots Cell in the back and gets waved away. Nothing really to see here. But he does riz up 18 at the end, and we find out that he went all the way. So that's cool. Good on our boy with the happy ending.
That's my boy! That's my boy!
Alright, now we're on to easily my least favorite arc in the series, which is the Buu Saga. I know some folks are gonna get mad that I said I don't like this arc, but it's not that I don't like it, it's just the weakest of the 4 in my opinion. Like seriously, don't get me wrong, it has some good stuff. There's some good stuff going on in this arc, and I still enjoy it a lot, and I go back and watch it and read it all the time, but it has to be the weakest. And a big reason for that has to be mainly just because of the absolute knots that the author wrote himself into to make Goku and Vegeta the only relevant characters in the arc. Regardless of the reasoning behind this, you know, you hear everything from the editors or the fans or whatever wanting Goku back as the protagonist and rejecting Gohan as the new main character. Whatever, I don't really know how much of that is true. I haven't really researched it. Maybe I should have, but who cares? The main point is that regardless of the reason, it doesn't really change the fact that some of the coolest potential in the series gets continually wasted for the sake of propping up the 2 main Saiyans. But whatever, this is not a why I don't like the Buu Saga video, although that might be a pretty good idea to do in the future. But honestly, other than his absolutely horrendous hairdo, there's just not a whole lot to say about Krillin in this arc. I do like the drip, I like the red shirt and the khakis, but the hair, I just can't deal with the hair. But aside from that, Krillin is barely in this arc. He's barely in it. Sure, he initially travels to Babidi's ship with the other fighters, but he immediately gets spit on, literally, and turned to stone. I guess you can point out that he helps out with taking Goten and Trunks to safety when Vegeta is about to self-detonate, but then he's just gone again for a while. He does show up briefly when Buu rolls up at the lookout way later, and after Buu breaks out of the hyperbolic time chamber during his fight with Gotenks. Whatever, I think it sounds cooler than the Room of Space and Time, but you can call it whatever you want, I don't care. But Krillin recognizes that once again, despite the opponent being an even bigger threat than he's ever seen before, he has to challenge him for the sake of his family and friends. Yes, he's instantly killed, but still. It's another example of Krillin's willingness to step up and do what needs to be done, even if it results in his own demise. And I just think that's pretty admirable and that's pretty cool. It's one of the reasons why I just really like his character. There is also a brief scene of filler in the anime where he's shown throwing hands with Yamcha at a level that makes no sense whatsoever, impressing guys that even Super Saiyan Goku had trouble with in the afterlife, which is also filler, but PyCon is cool, so who cares? But other than that, we're pretty much done here. So I don't know, I mean, despite falling off toward the end of the series, which by the way, everyone did that, not just Krillin, he's tenacious, tactical, resourceful, and courageous in the face of much stronger opponents than himself, and I think that's awesome. He doesn't need huge power boosts and transformations to make himself useful, and aside from the Buu Saga, he manages to stay pretty relevant throughout the series. Even though a lot of times he just gets relegated to comic relief and being the butt of a lot of jokes, I honestly think he's one of the unsung heroes of Dragon Ball Z. Now, like and subscribe, or Buu is gonna fly in your mouth and make you explode.